Hey, welcome to This Old Bike, brought to you by I Know a Guy Bicycles. With this particular episode, we're going to do an editor's cut of revamping what was already released, kind of repurposed on its own channel. Welcome to This Old Bike. From here, we're going to take my 35 years experience, remaster the classics of the old days, 10 years or older bikes, as well as some tech tips in addition to vintage tools. Well, thank you for hanging out with my 35 years of experience. I'm going to guide you through this journey of checking out these classic bikes. Brought to you by The Guy. Okay, so back to the bike. LeMond Tourmalet. It's like the mid-pack of the LeMond line. This is when it was built by Trek, acquisition by Trek, or not acquisition, but at least named, that kind of thing, with Greg LeMond himself through the 90s and into the early 2000s. This is one of those lead-in entry bikes for you to get into road riding back in the day. Mid-range, decent componentry still. Does have a triple steel frame, double-butted chromoly, 853 Reynolds. I mean, come on. And a carbon fork. Has your, basically, what's a matrix? Really? No, they ain't gonna be using that. Oh yeah, it is a matrix Aurora rims with Tiagra hubs. Alrighty, this is where we're gonna talk about where did Greg LeMond show up, right? You may not even know. I mean, you might be into cycling, never heard of the name. Yeah, the name has been snuffed by the early 2000s, but you need to go back in time to a point where the Tour de France has been going on for almost a century, century, yeah, almost 100 years. In that 100-year period of time, no American has ever won the Tour de France. It's been one of those crown jewels of road cycling from the beginning, almost. Talking about the crazy French. Any case, therefore, Greg LeMond in the 80s was one of the first Americans to win the Tour de France, which is a big deal. Like, you know, over the pond. Yeah, we didn't have that big. I mean, we had a big cycling culture, but we didn't have a big cycling presence yet. And then when he came in with a 7-Eleven team and that kind of deal, bam, with the funky neon colors. Yes, exactly. Don't remember exactly the year. I'd have to look it up, but comment below if you have information or you're old enough like me that knows exactly the impact of your neighborhood or your shop or what have you. But in any case, his name was pretty big. And actually, in the time of the 90s, when Trek was acquisitioning a whole bunch of different brands, so owning that particular company and doing those particular refining of the better steel frames, and then they got into carbon when they switched over to the overseas building of it in the early 2000s. That's where you got some pretty cool, fun frames. I'm riding on two LeMonds myself. That's why I kind of like featuring these. And I do. Look at this guy, LeMond. Pretty nice little bikes if you like steel frames. Schwinn in the early 2000s had some nice ones, which you'll find pretty good deals on without paying a lot of price on it because the Schwinn name got pushed down. So let's finish the story with LeMond, right? LeMond, he's a good cat. Apparently he's super funny, jokester, that kind of thing. One of these days I'd love to have like a meeting with him. Maybe I can leverage Mr. John Bradley to introduce me and have a little one-on-one. Greg, you know, if you're out there, give me a call. Any case, love your bikes. They revamped the line, but at the mid-2000s, around 2007 or so, said some stuff about Lance Armstrong, doping. That's what the story is. Pissed off Trek. Trek's like, we have all this investment in Armstrong, so we're going to can you drop the line in a heartbeat. Okay. It was pretty abrupt, very bitter divorce. There's several articles on that to read. Not pretty. Unfortunately, the line got dropped. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, in the manufacturing world, you still have crap in the pipeline, need to be built up. And they were like, I got contracts, and you know, people in Taiwan are going, we're building you bikes. Doesn't matter what. So they decided to slap Gary Fisher on the road line that they had leftover contracts with. Not 100% sure, pretty sure. It very seems like it. Talked to an engineer that kind of hinted at that. I don't have any exact, but when you look at the geometries of those Gary Fisher road bikes, and Gary Fisher never had road bikes before, yeah, interesting. So the next little generation of, they didn't have a lot of them. They only lasted for like a year or two to appease the contracts in the Taiwan market or giant or whatever they were having them built. Yeah, and I'd had a few of those refurbished Gary Fisher road bikes, and they're nice, and yeah, they fit really close to the specifications of the LeMonds. Interesting enough. In any case, whatever they couldn't can, they had to build, and they had to slap another name on it. So therefore, it had to keep going. Unfortunately, LeMond was kind of shelved his name for a while. He is coming back. Look him up. LeMond has his own, I forget, Memphis, I think it is, or somewhere around there in the South, in the Bible Belt area. He has a facility. It's apparently close to a carbon manufacturing place. He's building up carbon bikes. He started with more of the e-bike, luxury, leisure riding bike. Now he's added some other road bikes. Not a huge volume, but hey, if you want that LeMond feel and LeMond ride with an e-bike, that's the place to go. In any case, he's had a great story, a great run. He's coming back. Kudos for you, man. Love your stuff from the other days, and look forward to seeing your newer stuff come through once they finally hit my neck of the woods. But yeah, going back to this, we're looking at a used bike here. Okay, so did my little jibber jabber on the history of Le Mans. Cool steel frames. You can find them in the neck of the woods. It's great. I have a couple customers. It's all they'll buy and ride. They have various different models over the years. They're kind of fun. The spine bikes are kind of cool with a carbon top with a steel bottom, which got one hanging in the back here. I'm stripping and painting at some point. We'll get around to it. But in any case, this is a good one. So let's go into what are we looking at when you buy a used bike that might still need some work, specifically on this one. For my expertise and what I love to do to the bikes and my over attention to detail for doing this for 35 years. Okay, first off, I got like the cables up front. One of the cables, the right shifting is kind of funky. It doesn't catch all the time. I'm going to ultrasonic clean that. Replace the cables in the housing. The housing on the front is actually cracked and split and is not routed correctly around the brake. So that's one particular issue that needs to be addressed. The second one is the chain has stretched. So that needs to be addressed with either a new chain or a newer chain, which I'm going to put a new chain on, of course. And I'm going to put on a wax one because wax is the way to go. Front derailleurs of the Tiagra, he may not know this, not a lot of people do. Those particular ones had a tendency of breaking. They have a little tab where the spring connects to. There was a faulty casting, and I have 3 or 4 of them already in my bin. They break, and I'm just going to check it for hairline cracks. If it has hairline cracks, I'm replacing that front derailleur. Come on, it's like a $20 lift. You can save somebody a hassle later on down the road. So inspect the frame. The frame itself has some garage scuffages on it. For me, detailing, if you've watched any of my stuff, I love detailing frames, so I'm going to give it the love of polishing, get all the scratches out, get the paint as corrected as possible, and then add, you guessed it, a ceramic coating to protect the rest of that paint from discoloring, and also with a steel frame that acts as another water barrier from preventing of rust, which is another great thing. This is a pretty awesome little bike once I get done with it. It's actually a pretty decent bike. Could a person ride on this for a while? Yeah, absolutely. You can probably get a few rides in there, but the bar tape definitely needs to be replaced. That one shifting thing would probably not give you the best experience possible, so that's one thing. Would it cause you to crash? Probably not. It's just not, you're going to think it's broken, but it probably just needs to be cleaned. It may be broken. We'll find out here, and we'll do a review on the parts here after that. But looking at this particular bike, it's in really pretty good condition. I did inspect it pretty closely. Kind of highlight anything that does really pop out that's super scary. If not, we'll just do a parts review and what I find for the minor things, and do a final review how this bike turned out in the process. And hopefully you're seeing me strip this all down, and we're about ready to reveal those parts after this. Well, here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Yeah, let's do the parts reveal after doing truing ceramic coating with the ceramic spray wax from others. It does really well on rims and parts, so I've been doing that lately. You can pick it up at Walmart or on your Amazon account. Links will be below on my Amazon store. But anyway, looking at this, this does have a Tiagra Shimano rear hub. Super smooth, really good condition. Spokes are good. Wheel is fairly true, just a couple tweaks. The rim well is very, very smooth. Like, it hasn't been used all that much. In other words, it has a lot of material left and it'll last a long time. Here's the interesting bit on this one, going back to old school. This is a Matrix Aurora rim. This also is an asymmetrical rear, which means the spoke holes are not in the center of the rear, it is offset. In other words, to give you a longer drive side spoke, to give it supposedly more strength. Kind of cool tech. Bontrager came up with that in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, so it was being used on this particular rim. Also has the eyelets, which actually is an upgrade. So it did have a couple spokes with kinks, like got somewhere, but they're still intact, so I'm not going to worry about them. These are USA made, even though the USA sticker is the one that actually delaminated the first. But it is the Aurora off-centered rim. Well, other thing that was interesting for this time period was the CAS technology. What that is basically spoke prep, which they try to copy the Will Smith spoke prep back in the 90s when we did custom wheels to prep the threads. The first batch of these wheels that they did with that particular CAS system was almost like Bondo. They basically seized all the nipples onto the spokes, so you couldn't true it at all. I mean, it was like horrible. They did dilute the solution, or changed it so it was actually pliable. So the newer versions, they used it for about 3 or 4 years. The later versions actually work well. It's supposed to keep the spokes intact as when you're adjusting it, and it stays there without twisting the spoke. So it's kind of a 2 win-win, but at the first go around it was kind of a train wreck. The tires, interesting enough, they are colored, it's fine, but faded a little bit on the other side. In other words, this bike sat in an area where it got exposed to a lot of sun. The tire itself is actually in pretty good shape. Not delaminating, not dry rotting, a little bit of a flat spot-ish, a little bit, but as you can see, it is pretty darn true and ready to go. That's just the wheel. Front is the same, pretty much clean, but it doesn't have an asymmetrical. We just waxed the chain. This actually was a new chain. He just apparently didn't use a power link, or not a power link, I'm sorry, a push pin to install the Shimano chain. So I was able to use a 9-speed. Not sure if he had the right clip on there, so I put it on the 9-speed one to ensure it was. And then we have the clean cassette brakes, which is basically a knockoff brand. I had a little bit of surface rust on there that I tried to scrape off, and that seemed to be in pretty good condition, that aspect. And you got the pedals, but I'll be putting on platform pedals. Here is the shifters. They cleaned up really well. When you do the ultrasonic cleaning on these, I do it for about 5 minutes, no more than that. Then I run it under hot water and cycle through all the shifting. That usually blows out any kind of the degreaser, gunk, and also the old grease, and it comes back to life. Then I pre-treat it with the Tri-Flow Superior Lube. I like the foam stuff, which is this here. This actually goes inside. Show you. It kind of just penetrates the inside and just like soaks everything. Works really well. That's pretty much the only part I use the foam. Everything else I use the drip. Cranksets. So pretty clean. The front derailleur still has its little nubbin and it's holding pretty well, which is this piece right here. Looks intact, so this front Tiagra derailleur seems to be holding up. Not to say it won't last forever, but at least for now it's doing good. If you need to switch this out, you can just use a braze-on, or you can get a clamp, which they usually have stamped on the inside here, which is called 31/8 clamp for this one. So if you need to switch that out. The rear derailleur was really clean anyway to begin with. I just made sure I put the ultrasonic cleaner because I'm going to be doing a waxing on this. So I just want to make sure the whole drivetrain was super clean and ready to go. Because the wheels were slightly dirty around the hubs and everything, so that warranted me to just do a super clean. I kept that housing just in case for measurement to cross-reference it when I install. And yes, here it is, boys and girls. We did compound from Adams and polish with the polishing. We was using the Dremel tool. And they come, you can get these little pads here to go with it. If not, you can take a bigger pad and cut it down, which I've done that too. But that does help correct the paint as much as possible and give it a good polish. That paint soaked up the polish a lot. I mean, it was just really kind of dry. And then we did a ceramic coating from Ceramic Slam. This works really well and everything else as well. So here's a reveal of the frame. Whoa, that's almost a powerful red, right? So this particular paint on the LeMonds, especially the steel frames of this vintage, is pretty thin on most of them. This one looks like it got painted twice because it has like a blue chips underneath, but most of them, just as note, it's just kind of thin. So you go light and polite when you do any of the buffing and so forth. You don't want to cut through that clear coat or the paint to the steel. And then we had about 3 stack of the ceramic coating. You can see it's kind of a haze right now, but when wrong rag, that's a dirty rag. I want a clean rag. No. Yeah, we want a clean rag. You want to do a clean rag and basically knock down that haze. That'll actually bring out the ceramic coating super shiny. So that protection is UV protection, help the stickers and the paint from discoloring in the sun. In addition to, it's super slick, a little bit aerodynamic, but really the best benefit is it water beads tight. So when you get water, mud, or anything like that, it rinses off easily. And if you have any of these chips areas, it actually seals those areas a little bit, therefore prevents contaminants are getting any underneath. Especially on a steel frame, they'll prevent that rusting effect. And you saw that I took off the bottle cages too and all that. I want to make sure these bottle mounts are still intact, and when I re-put the bolts in, I put them with a good layer of grease. Double check the bottom bracket and the headset's good. This turned out immaculate. I mean, yeah, it has some scuffs here and there, but all in all, for the age, this is close to 24 years old. I mean, it's an older bike. What date is the 21.6? This does have the more ergo bars, which you don't really need to switch if you don't feel like you need to. But you still have an 1 1/8" headset, so you can switch out to a 31/8 stem with different length if you want, and also the wider 31/8 bars. You can throw a carbon on there too if you want. And this one's a 27.2 seat post, which just has an alloy seat post. So quite honestly, I think in Amazon you can get a carbon bar and a stem, roughly 50-60 bucks. Well, the stem will be alloy, but you need to go to 31/8 to do a carbon bar, which has a nice little internal cable routing there. And then you get a seat post, which is carbon, for another 30 bucks or so. That will actually give the ride more of a supple feel to it, and actually add to that steel feel ride. I mean, also with the carbon fork, that would actually give it a wonderful feel. Just as it sits as the frame and fork, I mean, this is an awesome bike. I mean, if you wanted to upgrade this to 11-speed Tiagra or the SRAM Red or Di2-ish, I'd go with the SRAM electronic shifting if you're going to go electronic shifting. Just reason being is you don't have any of those tuck points where you can put the battery and stuff for like the Di2 kind of thing. And also a cable here. Yeah, and then I think, you might be limited because this is not disc, so yeah, you would have to have a cable actuated electronic shifting, which I think the only E-tap is. I'll have to double check that. I may have changed it since then. But hey, look at that, beautiful. So let me crank some tunes. We can actually get some lunch, take a little bit of break, and then I'll slap this thing, put it back together, fine tune it. The heavy lift is pretty much over at this part. I'm really about, I would say probably 3.5 hours in, and probably another 1.5 hours till completion. So yeah, something like this does take me about 4 to 5 hours from end to end, but the results are going to be amazing. Crazy but I just love doing what I'm doing. But in any case, here's the parts once more. Beautiful, pretty much OEM for the most part. So yeah, we're gonna get this all dialed up and fine-tuned. I mean, come on, why not? There we have it. Reynolds 853 Tourmalet double butted tubing. Ooh, look how pretty that paint, or the sticker decal. It's like that deep bass blue flake paint. Yeah, with that red, that pretty red came out really well with the ceramic coating, detailed, very clean. Componentry is pretty decent. Tiagra with 105 rear. Things I would probably replace on this after a while would be definitely maybe the brakes, a little more better power, like a Shimano Tiagra 105. You can find those in the used market for this vintage pretty inexpensively. Front derailleur will probably eventually go at some point. So I've had problems with those Tiagras, but that one seems to be doing okay. I mean, if you're going to upgrade a bike just for upgrading reasons, wheels is usually the first thing you do. Even though this house comes with a really decent wheel set, but they are heavier, so you can, get yourself a nicer, lighter weight, carbon style wheel set that actually give better performance and lighter weight. As in crank sets go, I mean, it's not the lightest, but again, you can find Tiagra or Dura-Ace triple, possibly. And shifters, that's the more expensive lift, for sure, if you're going to go that route, but it seems to be holding up pretty well. But this bike, for the price it's going to be, one heck of a starter. Awesome bike, and definitely upgradable if whoever deemed to do so, for sure. Well, anyway, thanks for hanging out with me in the garage and checking out this LeMond Classic Tourmalet. Butchering it. Anyway, until next time, have a great day in your neighborhood, and if it's nice in your neck of the woods, please go for a ride. And if you have any bike like a LeMond or a steel frame or anything like that you ride, please add to the comments. It is a community. Well, that concludes this episode of This Old Bike. Thank you for tuning in and watching through the final reveal of the perfect bike for you. Maybe, maybe not. But in any case, I hope you learned some things along the way in the journey of a bike mechanic refurbishing these particular beautiful gems of the past, which are very relevant of today. Thanks for tuning in, and you will find other videos like these. Go ahead and click here to enjoy more refurbished, detailed bikes that are from the past.